I felt through my own struggles or adversity and having a couple tough games, is that if my energy could go into my teammates or even a staff member or something, as opposed to the woe is me and I'm going to bury my head here so that everybody could see me not feeling good, and then their energy get wasted on me. That what if guys know I'm struggling, but I come in and I'm asking them, hey, what a great play you made. Like, I know you're hung up on, but you made a couple great plays. All of a sudden their shoulders was like, what the fuck is this guy doing? Like, how was he? And all of a sudden the energy of the room, we've all been seeing the guy that's so happy he's got to go the next day. He doesn't. And it's, he's bitching at the trainers and he needs this in a stall or needs this, just energy just crashes. So it's not easy to do, but I always felt that if I could show how I could navigate through adversity, that maybe it would change the way other people thought about their own adversity, and how maybe as a group we could work our way out of this, as opposed to let me try to tailspin and everybody. I mean, nobody's
Right.
going to get me out of that besides me. So why not save them the time and energy? I'll get myself out of this and see if I can't give some energy to somebody else that might need it in the room. The odds are pretty good it's going to come back to me tenfold.
That was Ryan Johnson, General Manager of the Utica Comets of the American Hockey League and Director of Player Development for the Vancouver Canucks, and you are listening to the Up My Hockey Podcast with Jason Padone.
Just watch me now.
Welcome to Up My Hockey with Jason Padolan, where we deconstruct the NHL journey, discuss what it takes to make it, and have a few laughs along the way. I'm your host, Jason Padolan, a 31st overall draft pick who played 41 NHL games, but thought he was destined for 1,000. Learn from my story and those of my guests. This is a hockey podcast about reaching your potential. Hey there, and welcome back to the Up My Hockey Podcast for episode number 50. I can't believe we're here. We're at 50. It's been a crazy, wild ride. Thank you so much for being along this ride with me. It's been an experience to go from, somebody who definitely isn't on a microphone or in front of a camera very often to doing this essentially once a week for over a year now is something that I'm proud of. It's an accomplishment for sure, but it's also one that's been rewarding to me. It's something that I've enjoyed much more than I initially anticipated at episode 1, and with every guest, kind of my passion for this has grown. It's such an amazing conduit to amazing people. I get to have conversations with either old friends, old teammates, new people, but everyone has a story and something to offer, and getting into those stories has been a blast. And I always leave charged up after an interview, and this particular conversation kind of checked every single box for me. I left this conversation when I was excited for this conversation too, and I left it feeling, heartwarming, for lack of a better word. I just felt good, speaking with Ryan Johnson, who in himself in his own right, as a father, as a man, as a teammate, as a human, is just a solid guy. But he was a teammate of mine and my first pro roommate, and a good friend for a couple of years there with Florida. And then, as the hockey world does, it tears teams apart and friendships apart with trades and what have you. And Ryan and I essentially lost contact. Didn't speak with him for years and years and years and years. And we bumped into each other at the NHL draft back in 2019, I think it was now. And it was amazing to see him then after all these years. And then this was kind of a follow-up conversation, and a long overdue conversation. And it was just awesome, to reminisce, to dig into who Ryan Johnson is and what he's doing today and what he represents was amazing. And even Ryan's path, right, is another check mark box for me, because now he's Director of Player Development for the Vancouver Canucks. He is responsible for growing the prospects, the Canucks prospects, to get them to become professionals and get them to take the step to be Vancouver Canucks. And that's his job. And he's also the GM of the Utica Comets, which is the AHL affiliate for the Vancouver Canucks. So he's a behind-the-scenes guy now who gets it from a player's perspective. And as a young man growing up, he was somebody that was continually trying to find ways to improve and to craft, the perfect pregame routine and to build this relentless approach to being an NHLer. And he earned every single one of the 700 games that he got. So he places, those intangibles that I like to talk about so much, like character and professionalism and, being a good human, being a good teammate. He wants his players to exude those types of things because he knows as well as I do, and as many of you listening, that will make you a better team. It's going to make you a more winning organization, and it's going to make you a better player and a more valued player with a longer career if you can capitalize on those traits. So this is a great conversation, one that was, personally really fulfilling. RJ, if you ever listen to this, you know what I think of you. You're an awesome man, good human, and I really enjoyed the 2 hours. It was crazy. I talked to my dad after the interview, and he's like, how long did you talk to him for? I was like, 2 hours. He's like, 2 hours? You talked to somebody for 2 hours? My old man's kind of old school and not too much of a conversationalist, and that just absolutely boggled his mind. And for me, it was like, my God, I think we could have gone on for, hours and hours more. There's just so much to talk about. He's so easy to talk to. So I hope listening today, you get that experience too. Like you feel a part of the conversation, that it seemed easy to me. It definitely wasn't forced, and lots of good stuff in here. So you have the pleasure here of listening to Ryan Johnson, a 700 game NHLer. An awesome dude, current general manager of the Utica Comets, current director of player development for the Vancouver Canucks. And yeah, there's lots in here. So without further ado, let's bring you Mr. Ryan Johnson. All right, here we are for episode 50. Big smile on my face. RJ was laughing at me because of this big duster I have right now. But we are speaking with my first ever professional roommate and a buddy of mine from, what is it now, 25 years ago almost, if not more.
It's crazy.
Meeting at camp for the first time. It is insane. But I should give you a little more professional introduction. He's the director of player development for the Vancouver Canucks, a 700 game NHLer. And the first man who ever taught me how to make sauteed mushrooms, Ryan Johnson. Welcome to the program, buddy.
Oh, thanks for having me. That's quite the notation I get on me. That's impressive. Yeah.
Well, you know what, man? My memory, like I'm not known for my memory. I got to be honest. Like I don't know what it is with whether it was just the career or the sport in general, but like how many times I was traded, whatever the case may be, like there's so much stuff that I know that I barely remember. But like I remember in that kitchen in Greensboro, North Carolina, you bringing out the white wine and you had the garlic going, and like we were trying to figure out how to be chefs. And those, to this day, I still rank those up there as some of the best mushrooms I had. So I do remember that, partner.
Well, and I remember the to the minute that you were traded, sitting in our living room there, and you get dealt to Toronto, and you weren't going, that was, you were leaving the American League and going to play in Toronto, and what a city. And I remember being so happy for you and excited and sad at the same time. I was losing my roommate, but also knew that the opportunity ahead of you was pretty crazy. So it was cool. Some good times.
That's man. Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy that we got there already. But I mean, since you touched on it, I mean, for the backstory, if this is somebody's first episode or haven't really heard, I mean, Ryan and I were getting ready for a game in the AHL that night, and in Greensboro, North Carolina, which, I mean, hey, it was a hockey city and it was a pro city, and it is what it was. But I mean, that was a hell of a long way away from the NHL when we were there. I mean, it just didn't feel the same, right? It wasn't a hockey town. And we were in bed, and I got the phone call, and in 2.5 hours I was gone, and Ryan didn't have a roommate anymore. And, I had to leave half my stuff there, and Ryan was amazing and helped me get some stuff around. But like, what was that? Like, I mean, obviously I'm in my own head during that whole time, right? Like my life just goes upside down. A little different impact on you, but like, what was that experience like for you, going from having a roommate, first year pro, to not having a roommate and doing your thing? Like, did it have any type of a kind of, I don't know, impact on you?
Yeah. And I think even now you reflect back on it. Like, I look at players now, I often find their first year pro is their toughest. The ability to adapt to the pro life of living on your own, whether people come from college or junior, where you're a billet type situation, or you're coming from Europe or whoever, that first year is like a wow moment of, wow, this is, there's a lot on my plate besides, and now you got to be a pro and develop and play in the American League, and men are coming after you, and it's a lot at one time. So, I mean, I remember that moment vividly, the big smile on your face, you're going to Toronto, we're in Greensboro, and like you said, it was like the call that, you were going to the moon and I was staying on Earth, and it was like, hey, whatever I can do to help you here on Earth, but I'm going to watch you go to the moon and enjoy, your first initial games. I remember going anywhere and everywhere in Greensboro to try to be able to watch you, and was just proud. And it was a lesson for me of how, quickly things change in this sport, and you can be here today and gone tomorrow. And it wasn't, shortly thereafter, I had my own moment of like that the first time I was traded, from Florida. So crazy, but it makes you, I appreciated our time together, and not just that year, but also us coming in and being drafted in the same year. And like I said, I could sit and look at your face. I haven't seen you in a long time, but I feel like we could sit in the living room in Greensboro and have a beer right now.
Oh, sure.
And be like nothing changed. So,
yeah, no, 100%. You make some great points there. I mean, already, and I knew this conversation was going to be awesome. Just because we have so much in common on a lot of levels, and then so much not in common on levels too, right? I mean, like that first year pro, when that trade happened, I'd already played 19 games and I'd been up twice, I think. So I just got sent down. You hadn't played an NHL game yet, right? Nope. So kind of different ends. I looked at, I had a little chuckle actually at your first year pro there. You were minus 25 that year.
Oh yeah. Welcome. I mean, and I think, I still, you talk about memory. Like, I can't remember things from last week, but I can remember line mates. I remember who you played with. I remember, the taste that you got in the NHL, but I felt when you were traded, it was like, it was a different time of you going up where Toronto really, it was just like I felt like that was your time. And in my regard, I was where I needed to be. My maturity, my growth as a player still had a long ways to go. And I knew that, and my process was going to be longer, but it was, like I said, I've always been like that. I was like that as a player. I do a lot of observing and taking information or watching people. And, like I said, I was proud. I was like, man, what a great opportunity for Podsy. So
you said something really interesting there, which is you knew that you weren't ready and you were in your right place. You mean doing what you're doing now, I'll push back on you a little bit. I mean, do you think that that's an honest assessment, just being that 20-year-old guy? Like, did you really think you were in the right place? Did you have that awareness at that time to realize that? Because I know a lot of guys don't, right? A lot of guys are in that first year pro and they're like, I'm not supposed to be here. I want to be somewhere else, right?
Yeah, and I give credit to even to the Panther organization at the time. I mean, I think I had almost scored 20 goals that year. I had made big stride. I remember playing on the line with Dave Nemirovsky and Peter Worrell, and we had a lot of success. And you could very easily get caught up in, all right, now is my time. And I remember talking with Chuck Fletcher of him saying, look, we're not going to call you up this year. You're not going to get an opportunity. I think it was at about the 55 game mark. I said, you're going right where you need to be. So let's take the weight off your shoulders. You're not getting called up. We could lose 10 bodies. You are staying right where you are. And I remember going, oh, that's great. Like, I needed to hear that, because I did not feel like I was knocking on the door and that my time was, I felt like if I was going to do it right and for a long time, I didn't want a little, and I talk to young players about this now. I say, like, you can call up and play 2 games and come back. And then you go up and play 3 games and come back. And you want to get called up and you want to never come back. and that should be your approach as a young player. And so when I finished that year, and I felt like when Chuck Fletcher told me that, I felt like I can just focus on what I need to do for the next 20 games. I went up as a black ace in the playoffs, got a great experience there. And then I came back the following year really like, all right, now I got to kick the door down and evolve my game, add things to my game. And I felt, it wasn't a sprint for me. It was going to be a marathon. And when I went, I never wanted to come back. And that's kind of the way it played out,
That's awesome. I mean, you're an old soul, man. I mean, that was great to have that perspective because it definitely helps. And like you said, I mean, there's a big piece of that puzzle is Chuck Fletcher being transparent enough and honest enough to tell you what's going on.
100%. And that took the weight of and even teammates or coaches are saying, hey, you keep going, you're going to get your chance, you're going to go up, and that starts playing in your head. And then your focus goes off of your day-to-day routine, getting better, focusing on practice, games, being the best player, not on Saturday night, but Monday morning at practice. And that was kind of my focus. And Chuck took all that noise off the table, and I could just go, okay, I'm going to get harder in the gym, harder in practice, and focus. Everything is going to be so finite to me in my approach in the next 20 games that then I'll build off of that next year and try to be one step closer,
Yeah.
So
that's, I love that. Not worried about Saturday night, worried about Monday morning. I think that's a piece of the puzzle that I know I'm not sure if I ever really embraced that, to be honest, like at any point. Like I didn't dislike practice by any means. I love being on the ice, but I just loved scoring goals in the games. Like that's what I mean. My whole thing was like, how do I produce? Like, how do I do this? And to me, it didn't necessarily equate to that Monday morning practice of how do I get better for that game. And I wish I had a little bit more of that in me. Do you think that was just more of a natural thing for you to be wired that way, or did you learn that from someone?
No, and I think my brother, I think that was instilled in me from my family. That was an approach, and I will say to your comment is that it almost worked reversed to me. Is that I ended up becoming such a good practice player, and I think people that played with me might say that things that I could do in a practice of on a day-to-day basis is that I think I really struggled at times with now duplicating that into a game where all of a sudden you have a fans on top, you got the emotions of the game, everything is changing it. And I think, and I still don't have the answer of why, but it was the poise or the little things, the little moments or holding on to the puck an extra second that in a game, you maybe overwhelmed you a little bit. And then you get Monday morning and you're like, you make the same play over and over, right? So I think that can almost work the other way. To your point, you could get through a week of practice and you would work, but when the lights went on, I mean, that was your time. And so I would say that maybe there's a balance there.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I hear you. One of the things that we haven't talked too much about on this program before, but again, I think it's more of a mindset thing, and that's when I think in junior, and I'll just speak for myself, like I think practice, I remember like being the last one off the ice, me and Dave Lemanowitz, like all the time, right? Like I just love being there. We were working on things without even knowing we were working on things. You know what I mean? Like it was just like passion, love of the game. And then when you get in to be a pro, and then it becomes a grind. It does. AHL level for sure, NHL level too, like with the travel. And you get to a point where at least I did, like you're getting through practice. You know what I mean? And I wasn't really thinking about how in the heck do I get better at the end of the day? Like I kind of felt like I was at a level. Do you know what I mean? Like, okay, I'm here. This is my level. And I'm just sort of like status quo. Whereas now in what I do now and in having conversations and talking to guys like you and researching some of these guys like Sidney Crosby continually are like they're consciously trying to get better. I mean, they're consciously trying to find ways to improve their game. Like I love that now, and that fires me up because it just makes so much more sense. Were you that guy that was in constant evolution? Did you feel like throughout your career?
I felt like I was, and I think one thing that I hugely value of young players is almost people can talk about skating, hockey sense, skill, One huge value when I look at young players is their ability to self-evaluate themselves on a daily basis. So when you can you can start to look at yourself as a player and watch tape and watch video and really be able to have a realistic view on where your game's at, shift to shift. And sometimes you're harder on yourself. You could go to bed that night and be, you know what, I was garbage tonight. But you can go back and watch tape next day and be, you know what, I did some really good things. The answer that I hate the most when speaking to young players is, you know, how was your game tonight? And they go, you know, I was good. You know, I was good. And to me, that's a big red flag. When you have the ability to, and I think this speaks to you in a long-winded answer is when you can really self-evaluate yourself on a finite level and then a big level, you can always find ways to get better. Yeah. And even if, you know, I talk to high-end skilled guys or people, I talk to them, you know, and just casually said, like, how many faceoffs did you work on today? Well, I'm a right winger. Well, why wouldn't you want to be a ringer in the faceoff? The last minute of a game, you're down a goal, you're up a goal. If it's on the right hand side, like, that should be your. Well, I never thought of it. Well, why wouldn't you? That's an extra 2 or 3 minutes out of a game. You might play 18 minutes now instead of 15 minutes because you might be the guy on a penalty kill. You don't see yourself as that, but we need a big draw on the right hand side. That could be you. So it's constantly, I think, for my process, and especially when I finally figured out realistically, even my second year in the AHL, I was over a point a game and, you know, having the offensive success and to where I felt I needed to be. Realistically, I was looking at myself in the mirror going, you're going to have to find a way to be a bottom 6 player in the NHL or it's not going to happen to you. And so as I'm producing all this offensively and being dependent on that, in my mind, I was thinking, I need to be the best penalty killer on the ice tonight. I need to win every faceoff, and I'm going to have to block shots and add those details to my game, or I could be sitting here in 4 years having 80, 90 points in the American League, but that's all I am, you know? And so I think that's where I was able to get ahead of it to say, this is how I'm actually going to get there when I do and stay there, which was, I think people battle with when they say, well, I had 60, right, 70 points. And it's like, okay, but where are you going to fit in at the next level? Like, finding your identity as a player is huge, and really knowing and trying to identify within your organization or outside your organization where could you fit into a team, as opposed to just being a guy that people go, well, good player, you know, how were you tonight? That was good. You don't want to be good. You want to be really, you want to be excellent at certain parts of a game, and then all of a sudden you create an identity and you start finding your way.
Wow, man, there's so much that I'm just writing notes like that I want to unpack on that, because one, you know, I mean, first of all, applause to you for being 21 years old in the American League and being a point of game guy and being like, no, you know, I gotta be this guy for where I want to go. I'm gonna have to be this guy like that. Talk about the skill of self-awareness there. Like you had it right in spades, big time. And I'm gonna fly my own flag here for a second, because like we haven't talked about much about what I do now, but now I'm working with either teams or players, you know, and helping them get better. I always include self-assessment stuff, always. Because like some guys, like you said, are too hard on themselves and they need to lighten up, right? They need to find the positive, and it's a mindset thing. Some guys are way too easy on themselves. Like you need to find out from a player perspective, even from like a character perspective, right? Like where are you short? Like you need some help in preparation, you need some help in time management, you need some help, like whatever these things are. Like if you got the blinders on, man, and you want to be a pro, you're not doing yourself any favors, right? So the earlier these guys develop that, I think there's a huge key. So I thank you for bringing that up. That's a big one for me too. But I want to talk about a little bit about the adaptability is the word that I wrote down there when you were talking about, you know, being an offensive guy. Now you're trying to create ways to have the coach be able to put you on the ice, right? Is essentially what you're doing. How key do you think that is just in general? And I'm talking about like, when should a guy, if you're going to be really proactive, start thinking about that? Is that like at the junior level? Is that like pro level, or like when do you think you should be doing it?
I think it's never too early. I mean, to start thinking of sometimes we sit down and watch a hockey game. You're just watching hockey, moving parts and good game, you know, lots of offense, great. But sometimes you've got to break it down situationally and look at where guys are finding their minutes. Why are they valuable in certain situations? And then looking at your own game, and am I a 200-foot player? Can I play it all minute? Can I play? Yes, because for every guy that is just a high skill power play player, there's hundreds of those at every other level, and then you get thrown into the next pool, and as you slowly, it gets watered down to where now maybe you're not as high end skill as you thought you were, because now you're in the big pool. So now where do you fall? You're still but you should never ever steer yourself away from being the skill. And there's so much value now in the NHL is, you have a first line and almost 2 second lines and a third line. Like the way of the game has changed so much. But so I don't think it's ever too early to start adding. As much as a guy works on his hands and small area things, you can work on face-offs. You can work at every power. Everybody can't be a power play. Paying attention to penalty killing, angles, play below the dots. It's never too early to look at where the game is going and how you may fit in it. And whether you're 16, 18, 21, 20, I don't think it's ever too early to think about being a full-rounded player, as opposed to just, I'm a one-trick pony, because for every one-trick pony, as you start going up there's a lot of those, and that's where it gets dangerous.
Well, and I think for me, from like just a human personality standpoint, and that's when I start talking with some of my players too about whether you just play hockey, as I call it, or whether you're a hockey player. Because when you're just playing hockey, a lot of these guys I find, and you may even see it at the pro level there at what you're doing now, but they like hockey on their terms, right? Like they want to be a power play guy, right? They want to be the one-timer guy off the side. They really enjoy that. But when you ask them, to play high guy and to make sure you're on the defensive side of the puck and to finish their checks, and that's the way you're going to get on the ice, they don't like that very much. And so, like, to me, it's interesting, because when you want to be a hockey player, you definitely need to be prepared to do things that maybe you're not either really enjoy doing, or maybe you're not good at doing, in order to be able to play the game that you love and get paid for it. And then maybe you evolve into that other player that you see yourself as, but you have to be prepared to, do some little bit more dirty work. Do you see that does eliminate some players from the game who's just not willing to go there? Yeah.
Or I think it's almost stubborn, that they're not willing to do the things to get their foot in the door. And sometimes I see it all the time is a guy that gets his foot in the doors. He scored 20 goals in Bantam, 20 goals in midget, 20 goals in junior, 20 goals in the American League, and 20 goals in the NHL. Why? Because he plays the game the right way. He commits to the details, all over it, and they just find a way, because they play in the middle of the ice. They go to the front of the net. They just find a way to score 20 goals every year. And those are the guys that find a way. It's the guys that go, well, you know what? I don't really feel I need to do the things to get my foot in the door, and I'll go right up and be a top 6 player when I'm ready. And then all of a sudden, they're year 3, they're year 4, they're year 5, and somebody else has come up and said, you know what? No. I'll be a matchup guy. I'll be a physical forechecking, even though it's not naturally to me, not something I've had to do. I will do it, but it'll get my foot in the door, where now maybe I start on the fourth line. You see guys that over time have started, and they just slowly work themselves up. So it doesn't mean that you can't be that player at that level. You're just going to have to, you have to add more parts to your game. You have to be able to give a coach the necessity to find you minutes, to get you on the ice. And then it opens the door to allow you to show that side of you. But I mean, very seldom, and there are often those high picks, they come in and they hit the ground running and they go. But to everyone else, you've got to create an identity, find a niche, get your foot in the door. And then it doesn't say to you, well, you're a fourth line player and that's all you are for the rest. But it gets you in the door and allows you the opportunity to show what you are as not just a player, but even as a person and a teammate. And those guys often find their way in and work their way up.
You mentioned, right? I mean, it is a little bit, I guess, more prevalent now, just with the way the salary cap is and, everything else, that you need young players to fill spots in your lineup. Like you essentially have to if you want to be a successful organization right now. So there are a few more players that step right in and play, but we're still talking about like what, RJ, like, 10 out of the best 18-year-olds in the world or 19-year-olds in the world that will go up. And that's probably even high, that will step right into a top 6 role, right? Like we're talking like
Very
the creme
rare.
de la creme de la creme, right? You know what I mean? So for the majority of people listening here, like you're not that player, you know what I mean? And not to be negative, but that's just the truth, right? So like if that's a scenario, you gotta, there's going to be a road, there's going to be an evolution, there's going to be a process for you to earn the trust, which I think is maybe one of the words you're looking for there when you're talking about a coach giving you minutes. Like coach got to trust you. Yeah. Right. Coach has got to want to put you on the ice and think that you're going to be, an attribute to the team out there, whatever situation he puts in. And a lot of times that's not just, being the one-timer on the power play.
And you know what? It comes back. You can talk about this about an 8-year-old or a 25-year-old. It's really hard. And find anybody, whether it's sport, business, anything. It's hard to work at something you're not very good at. Like you talk about messing around at the end of practice. Well, I watch guys at the American level, even at the NHL level. Well, practice breaks, what do? They line up pucks in the middle of the ice and they take one-timers for 15 minutes. I asked the guy, tell me the last time you took a one-timer in a hockey game that it, they said, I don't know, but it's fun to work at because you just bomb away top shit, right? But when you could be grabbing a coach and working on your mobility below the dots, your puck protection, your angles to the net, and all the stuff that you would actually use the next night. But we sit there and we're just going to bomb away, and to me that is the biggest, But you're working on something that is either just fun, or you're working on something that you're good at. Well, guys, it's hard for guys, even at this level, to work at something that they're not very good at. But that ends up being the difference maker of sometimes getting there or not.
Yeah, well, isn't that a great message? For sure. You got to be prepared to look bad to be good. That's one of the things I talk with my Pee-wees and Adams about, right? Like that. Of course, we want to be strength builders. There's things that you do well and you probably feel good about, and it's good for self-esteem and maybe gets you recognized. So of course, like we do want to work on those things, but we do want to be brave enough, let's call it courageous enough to look on the other side of that coin and see, hey, where are my dark spots here? And where are the things that I don't like doing?
It's funny that one of the biggest messages at development camp in Vancouver, and you've got first round pick, you got draft picks from that year, the prior year, some guys 3 years that you got general managers, scouts, and we get in and break them down into small areas of the game. We don't run 2-on-1s up and down the ice. You look flat, great. 3-on-2s, like that's not our time. But the first message I have to give them is, I need you to fail this week. And they are sitting there going, well, I'm being evaluated. Like my GM is in the crowd. Like I can't fail. Like, what do you mean? I said, well, your evaluation process already happened. You've been drafted here. We see parts of you that we want you to be Canucks. And now I need you to clean the slate. And if you're doing what we're asking you to do correctly, there's a good chance you're going to fall, or there's a good chance you might lose the puck the first 5 times you do it. But then we're trying to break you down and give you some structure and some things that truly are going to help you over the next few months of the offseason become a better player and a better person. So I need you to trust me that when you fail and we're doing a small skating move up the ice and you lose your footing and you go down, that you're not being thrown to the wolves and like, well, he'll never play. It's a part of but it's again, allowing guys to fail, understanding what we're going to do moving forward, where that same movement or that same drill or same something is they're going to perfect, and it'll end up being in games that they use, as opposed to, again, we can run up and down the ice, flow drills, and do these things that, sure, you feel good, but how did you get better? You really didn't.
Just going to take a short break of this amazing interview with Ryan Johnson, my old roomie, to say thanks, because there have been reviews coming in. I'm super proud. of the reviews and for you guys, taking the time to listen and to share your experience. And I promised that I'd be reading some of them out. So special thanks to Cups of Carabelli from the U.S. 5 stars, says, excellent podcast for all members of the hockey community. The insights into what it takes to become better, attitude, and the hard work. These interviews open a window into topics that outsiders rarely see. Keep it up. Thank you so much, Cups of Carabelli, for taking the time to write that and to tune into the show. Love that you're sharing your experience. Another one from Sweden. I mean, I just love this internet. It just goes everywhere. So funny, getting people tuning in from Sweden. And Acres Hockey in Sweden says, 5 stars, enjoyable pod format and interview style. Jason brings considerable value, insight, and an outstanding lineup of guests for those of us that live and love hockey. Excited to follow this show's progress. Keep it up. So thank you, Acres Hockey. Thank you so much for everyone who's listening, who's choosing to review and to share and to like, subscribe, all those great things. Keep those reviews coming, please. It totally helps the show. Still running 5-star questions. If you do have a question, please do ask in the iTunes format. Leave a 5-star review and ask a question. You'll get my opinion on whatever it is you want to get my opinion on. So once again, thanks. Grateful for your time and your support. And we'll get back to the episode with Ryan Johnson, Director of Player Personnel for the Vancouver Canucks. No, man, that's fail forward, I think, is a term that I've heard used and I've used myself. Like, you want to fail trying to get better, but you know what? Like, you just nailed it though, because that's much easier said than done. Like, you need a culture around that people believe what you're saying, because that's really hard to believe, right? As a 19-year-old kid coming in, like, it's okay if I fall. Like, all my peers are right here. All these guys are in the stands.
Yeah,
I don't want to fall. It doesn't feel good. It makes me look bad. But if you do create that culture of trust and of safety, and that this is actually what this team's all about, this is what this organization does, and this is what makes us different. My gosh, I mean, I've seen that happen in real time, and it's a really awesome place to develop for sure.
Yeah, and that's why the trust out of the gates, out of that camp, for these new players and the relationships you build, it's not overnight. It doesn't happen instantaneously, but the investment when it's a certain play or down the road, you're watching a game and a certain something that happens, or I always find, you're there when I'm having a conversation with a player and he is able to now tell me what the little thing he saw, the thing he did wrong that we've been talking about. And I say, hey, now you're now it's here. I don't even have to bring it to you. Now you're bringing it to me. And then the trust and those relationships and things start to change very quickly within, them understanding that you're giving them the guidance and the information to finally try to figure out themselves. Again, we come back to now self-evaluation where on a nightly basis, man, I had the puck low. I got rid of it too fast. Could have held it, got off the wall, cut back, gave myself time and space and made the right play. I threw it blindly, but and then I'm like, there you go. Now it's starting to happen to you already in your own brain without me even telling you. So there is a long, sometimes it happens pretty quick, but sometimes there's a build up to go, now I know why we did this in development and why we were talking about these things.
Right. No, man, I love it because, I mean, one of the things I say is like curiosity can lead to intention, right? So when we do get curious about our game and our development and start watching hockey, not from being a fan, but being a connoisseur of it, we can show up at practice, or we can show up at a game, or we can show up wherever with an intention on what you're just talking about, on how to do something different or what it is you're trying to accomplish. Like, I can't tell you how many times I just showed up at practice and waited for the drills to happen, and then you do the drills and then you go home, right? Yeah. The guys that show up with an intention, and that's what I'm talking with my guys now, like, what are you doing today for you that's going to get you better? Right. Yeah. Because the drills are going to be there for everybody. They're not perfect drills for everybody. Right. But there's something that you can do within that scheme, within that ecosystem that's going to apply to you and your personal development. But that's on you as a player. Yeah. I mean, it's not necessarily on Ryan Johnson. You can't tell 45 guys exactly what they need to do every day when they go out there, but they got to be curious enough to figure that out for themselves. Correct.
Yeah. And that's what I ask guys, especially in their transition, or I speak to them about it, whether it's junior or college, and then when they take the step into the pro, my first kind of question to them is, tell me, what is your professionalism? What is your level today? Where are you at? Like, is your professional, like we talk a lot about that in our culture, about how much how much can you be a professional today, and how can you approach today with a, like you said, an intention, with a routine of, am I going to show up at the rink? I've got an 8:45 meeting. Am I coming in at 8:35? I'm going to throw my stuff on, get in there, kind of go through things. And that's what I talk about the Monday morning. Like, how much better can you get on Monday morning and build on that throughout a week, as opposed to, and I've challenged guys. I say, I watched you all week in practice. You were garbage. And Thursday, you kind of started to, and then you're ready. You thought you're ready to go Friday. So, well, how much better could you have been Friday night if Monday you had a focus, you had a routine, and something that, like, that's where you're getting better, not Friday night when the lights turn on. And that's hard for guys to really grasp and understand. But when they do, they start saying, hey, Monday, I'm going to stay for just 10 minutes after. I'm going to work on puck protection on my hips. I'm coming out of turns, my footwork, my all that's in. And then tomorrow I'm going to work on this. And Thursday I'm going to work on that. All of a sudden you see the progression in the game he's becoming more of a professional hockey player, because his habits and his routine, you can see it start to go, okay, I really want to get out of here. Yeah. And now this is what I'm going to have to do to get there. And it's like when the light bulb goes on, you can see it. It's, a lot of people say, well, I could see, he played great Friday. I said, well, no, I saw him on Tuesday in practice, and he was dynamite. And it was leading up to this, which not a lot of, I don't think a lot of players think about. And I try to instill that in them right out the gates, is how much professional are you going to be this week?
That's amazing. So let's unpack that. So if every player, imagine this, like how much easier your job would be if starting in, major midget or even bantam, where players started to really self-assess on that, right? Like how am I going to get better? How am I going to arrive where I want to? And if professionalism is a key indicator for how they self-assess, for me right now and who I'm working with, that would be a bit broad. If you were to break professionalism into, let's say, components, like what would be the areas that they would be self-assessing on within that box called professionalism? Like what would they be focusing on that day to be able to give themselves a score?
Well, I think you have to have a routine. You have to have a plan. If you don't have a plan, you're hoping. You're hoping something good. When you have a plan, usually then you can work through the day. And even if it's from the time you wake up at 8 to the time you walk out of the arena at 1 o'clock, what is your plan? What are you going to focus on off ice? What is your nutrition going to look like? Getting into practice, like I said, you could wake up at 8:15, rolling 8:35, meeting 8:45. Well, I mean, it sounds cliche, but what have you put in your body? What have you done to really start your day the right way and get yourself ready? What is your, are you going to head into the gym, especially early in the week? Maybe you've got the week, like, what are you going to do off ice to make little improvements? Now we're finding, the game where it used to be your off season, you boom, 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 and then in season, you just kind of, well, now in season, you can keep progressing. You can get to the end of the season and you're stronger than you were May 1st than you were September 1st. Like, that's just the reality of it when it's approached the right way. Looking at not just daily blocks, but the week block. What am I going to do? What can I do pre-practice? What can I do post-practice? Professionalism for me, a huge part, especially your first year pro, is you have to watch film on yourself. We challenge our guys. We have iPads sitting in our video room. Games are loaded. Your shifts are loaded. We take the legwork out of it. You used to have to go, you throw in a VHS and you're, gosh, I got to find. Now we have everything sitting and waiting for you. So if you want to be in there at 7:30 in the morning, in watching your shifts, again, you have access to our coaches, to anybody to sit and really look at your game. You have to watch your game. It helps you with your time and space play. It helps you with so many parts of your game when you can watch yourself and watch yourself and watch yourself. That's a huge part of professionalism to me, is putting in the time to watch yourself, learn from certain moments, certain plays. And then, like I said, are you going through drills, or are you getting something out of the drill? Are you by pushing yourself, you're pushing your team. By being more professional, you hold a standard for the people around you. When the people around you are pushing more, you're getting pushed more. You're becoming better, and that's a huge part of our culture here, is making sure our practice level is through the roof, so that everybody is improving and everybody wins by that. And so the professionalism, I mean, I could go on and on. It truly, in my mind, if you want to play in the NHL, it never shuts off. because there's 700 plus guys that get to do it. There's a reason they get to do it. You can't turn it on and off, and sometimes it does. You said to it, the AHL gets a grind, and sometimes the AHL spits guys out. It chews them up and spits them out because they're not willing to say, this is what I do now. It's 24/7, and I'm all in on this. You can't dip your toe in the water when it comes to pro hockey. There's too many guys that want to figure out, that'll sacrifice, that'll find a way to do it, and you don't get there by being lucky or hoping. I know that.
Right. Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, yeah, what a big word, professionalism. I think that was, I remember our time, that was really what we were trying to figure out. And I think that there's a lot more tools, as you've already mentioned, I think, to the players now.
It's unbelievable.
Which I think is great. I mean, that is great. Do you think that leads to less accountability or more accountability? Or could you say neither? What I mean by that is, right, like I think with us, we didn't have skills coaches. We had, there was no one talking to us. Essentially, we were out there and like we either had to talk to somebody or we had to find our routine or figure out what it took. You mean there was a role model around or there wasn't? Now, so the accountability was on us, I guess. It was really on us. And we could point the fingers at ourselves and say, you know what, I did it or I didn't do it. Now with all these things around, and I think the modern day athlete has kind of been, lack of a better word, handheld the entire journey now. You mean from a younger age. How does that translate into the people that are showing up on your door when they get drafted?
Well, my main message to them is that you have every resource in the world. Like we've got skating coaches, skills coaches, mental performance coaches. Our coaches in the American League are a huge part of our development program. You've got your player development group of myself or other players that have lived this path. That you've got everything now there, but I can't make you use it. And it's the guys that say, give me anything and everything, and I'll go. When I've got to force feed a guy that I know doesn't move well, and he needs to spend the time on his feet and his footwork and on the ice and off the ice, and I've got to force feed it to, I know I've got a problem there. And so it's, you speak about when we came in, you got a workout handbook in the mail that it was just blanket. Everybody got the one, your workout book, and everybody on the day was doing squats and did it. Nowadays too is I don't blanket player development. I don't take a group of players and here you are. It's everybody. We have a plan in place individually of their needs, even sharpening what they're good at and taking their deficiencies and making them their strengths. It's just, you can't force feed them. This isn't the NFL model where you draft, you're in a facility 2 days later, you're in a weight room with our guys, and you have no choice. You do it, you may fail because it's not in you, or you don't want to do it, but you're going to do it every day. We don't have that ability. So the accountability and the buy-in is still there on the player. It's mapped out for them. It's put in front of them. There's no excuses. And there's nobody that can sit down the road at 30 years old and go, man, I wish I had, you had everything in front of you. You just chose not to. And that's, you got to make a choice. And that's why I say it's not something you can dabble in and get there. You're either all in or you're in the way.
One thing that I wrote down there that I want to go back on, because it's something that I do remember. I've acknowledged my poor memory, but was Peter Worrell, who has been a past guest in the show, and you've brought him up, and which triggered the memory, is when we would get the power skating people in Florida, and we would line up on the goal line, and we'd be working on our edges or doing whatever. That was one of the few things really from an extracurricular standpoint with it that Florida did at the time, right? I mean, just the NHL in general, but we did have those power skating instructors who would come in, and we'd be all at the one end, and Pete would still be at center ice, like falling over for the fifth time, and getting up and trying it again. And I remember at that time, although, I mean, there was some chuckles with the guys, and it's the NHL and you're joking, but like I had mad respect for Pete for doing that, and like, because it's hard to do that. It's hard to be prepared to not look good in front of your peers or anyone for that matter, and to have an ego that's small enough to be able to deal with that. And God, like, he'll be the first to admit he never turned into an amazing skater, but he turned into a good enough skater. You know, like
Absolutely.
he
Yeah.
did it. Like he ground it out and he did it. And like I just remember that. I mean, you see that in players, and I'm sure you see that now. And it's got to make your heart warm and bring a smile to your face because you know it's a fun thing to witness.
Oh, it is. You know, somebody had said to me early when I started doing this. They said, wait till one of your guys takes that step and gets there. The feeling that you have, and it is. It's almost like one of your kids. But it's also just as impressive to me, or when you built that relationship and a guy has gone on and maybe it hasn't worked out, but he reaches back out to you and says, hey, I got a job interview next week. Do you mind helping me out with, because the trust is, you know, you've built the trust, and it's not just, you know, we're all about in life building formulas to get somewhere, and you find your formula. It just doesn't pertain to hockey. It pertains to life and whatever you end up doing. But when you talk about Pete Worrell and finding a formula, like it brings almost tears to my eyes when I think back of those. I mean, having 30-year peers at the other end of the ice and him, like he had skate guards on, it literally couldn't get up and down the ice. But he had, you know, they always say, you know, a good racehorse, you look them in the eye, you'll see it in their eye, even before they run, how good they're. Pete had that look in his eye. He wasn't fazed. He's just like, I'm gonna get there. And you know, we were so fortunate to watch the evolution of this guy. And like I said, I played on the line with him in Greensboro. That he was turned into a heck of a player. And New Haven played together and talk about one of the hardest jobs in the game period of being a tough guy. And he had a lot of hurdles in his way, and he just kicked them down. And I still, you know, keep in touch with him every so often. And what a, you know, I think I could still say it to him this day, man. I'm so proud of you, like of what you were able to do and what you had against you. Like, it's incredible. But there's an example of a guy, he found a way. And would anybody have taken a first round pick that maybe should have walked into the league, and this guy finds a way? It's a great lesson, you know?
Yeah, no, it's a great lesson. And that's why I wanted to bring it up, because it is that, to me, that's something that doesn't get talked about enough. And we've spent a lot of time here today, and I do spend a lot of time in the podcast just talking about the stuff other than the skill and other than the goals and the assists, right? Because a lot of time I'm finding the more and more I dig into this, that success and high performance, as much as we all fall in love with talent, it's usually a character thing or a head thing. Like there's going to be adversity at some point. There's going to be a way to go about your business that's going to suit your high performance and your success. And yeah, the more actually become a student of success, you see that in guys, right? That they just go about it differently. And it's not a talent thing. People want to say it's a talent thing, and generally it's not, I think. How can you speak to that a little bit, just from what you see when guys come through your door and who goes on to be successful as far as career-wise, and what that means?
Yeah, I mean, the talent only gets you so far. And you know, I think such a common trait when it comes to talent now is there's skill, and then there's hard skill. Like today, you have to be able to use your skill and your talent in the hard areas and below the dots. And it's a different game. And a lot of that too is your makeup, is your willingness to be hard, to sacrifice, and there's guys that I can meet and I can spend 10 minutes with, you know, sometimes you're wrong, but I can just say that's a hockey player right there. That guy, he's a hockey player. He may be good, he may be average, but I get the feeling this guy gets it, and he's going to find a way. And then there's guys that, you know, first round pick, or that I'm overwhelmed with how much I think that they don't get it. And it's like, am I going to be able to? And I've seen this guy on the ice, but I'm still questioning. You know, and so I think 100% it comes down to, at the end of the day, what is between your ears? What are you willing to do? How much are you willing to listen? How willing are you to observe people around you? And again, how much are you willing to put into the game? It can give you a lot, but you got to give it a lot. And it's talent is by no means any indicator of, you know, for me, of who I think eventually gets there and who doesn't, because I've seen many high talented guys, you know, be those 10-year 60-point guys in the American League, and they make a great career, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's usually between the ears, and something that when they have a kind of a sense to them that nothing's going to get in their way of being a player. Those are harder to find than you would think.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a lot of guys that just want, I'm going to feel my way through this and see where it goes. It's not as common
Right.
to find guys that are just, they're going to kick the door down and they're going to stay, and that's just how it's going to be, which is interesting.
And they show up that way, I assume, right? I mean, I've seen that before too. Like some guys just show up, they're on the scene. That's, I mean, wherever they got that from, whether we're going to talk about nurture or nature, they just kind of, when you lay eyes on them, you just see what's going on. Have you seen an evolution where it's somebody that maybe didn't arrive on the scene that way, but then learned the competitiveness or learned the professionalism and then ended up finding the new levels?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of it was an identity crisis. Is, what am I? And I've seen a guy go from being a healthy scratch in the American League to, or a guy that was playing in the East Coast League, work his way up and all of a sudden be our call-up guy, and now playing in the NHL, because it was just it's so simple as having a conversation of, like, you know, your work ethic, everything is here. You're a great teammate. You've got a great foundation, but something's missing here. Like, you're a good hockey player, but we can't quite figure out. And it was an identity conversation. It's like, well, I'm not sure what I am. And I'm like, well, you've been professional for 3 years. We better figure this out. So what are you? And what do you bring to the table every day? And what's going to separate you from this guy and that guy? And then all of a sudden it was like, oh my gosh, I know what I am. But it's something as simple as that's gotten overlooked in trying to find a niche and trying to find your way, and going, okay, let's take a step back and really find out what you are. And then 2 nights later, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like he shot out of a can. He's okay being exactly what he is. Yeah. And you know, you find that as people. I tell my kids that all the time. Just be really good at being you, because you're wonderful. You're great. But just be really, don't complicate it. And that comes to a place. Sometimes we complicate the game so much that you get so erratic in your approach, and it's hard to focus when you really don't know what you are.
Yeah, that's so wild. And I mean, I can't help but reflect. And I think, you know, I mean, maybe that's what we both do, but like thinking back on the career, and that was one thing that I struggled with, the identity of, like, when I did go up and I had the opportunity at NHL level, is like, not only what was I, but what did they want me to be, you know, or how was I going to knock the door down? Because, you know, contrary to what some people might think, I thought I was too coachable almost. Like, you tell me to do something, like be on the defense side of the puck, I'll be there all day, you know, and I'll sacrifice offense for it. But like, I was never asked necessarily to be the third or fourth line guy to go kill penalties and go knock guys over and get in the odd fight. Like, I would have done that gladly, you know what I mean? But then when you go up there and you're trying to come off a 50-goal season and you're doing these things and you don't really know where you're fitting, it is hard, right? Because you don't know what you're supposed to do or how you're supposed to do it. So that's awesome that people are learning from kind of the mistakes from the past, especially what you're doing now, because my God, I know that would have been beneficial for me. This is what we want you to do tonight. Do this really well, you know, and then you can embrace it or you don't. At least the accountability is on the player now, right? To know exactly what it is you are asked to do, which I like. The one thing you mentioned about skill is, like, you know, can you do it in the hard areas? And one thing that came to mind was my conversation with David Quinn, who had a pretty cool line. He's like, I always say, he's like, what can you do when someone's trying to stop you from doing it? He's like, I don't care what you can do in your driveway. He's like, what can you do when someone is trying to stop you from doing it? And we were talking about competitiveness. Do you think that this is a drum I've been beating recently, Ryan, is because I can watch an NHL game right now and I can see guys that are just more competitive than everybody else. Mm-hmm. They win more battles. They get to the loose puck. They cause havoc. And I think that's interesting because we're talking like the best 700 people in the world, right? And I can still pick out guys that are
still
competing
some
hard.
Separation there.
Yeah, there's separation, right? Like, I think that is a choice as a player. I think that's a choice when you walk into practice. And I think that's one of the easiest ways to differentiate yourself from your peer group or from the competition. Do you think that's the case as well? Like, do you guys preach competitiveness? Is that something that you guys hail there in Vancouver? Oh,
for sure. And I think you can break that down into so many different areas. But even from watching a game is like even in talking to some of our young players a lot, it should piss you off if you're not the first man to the puck. Like, that is competitiveness. That is, when you're floating up at the top of the circles, what you're showing me is that you want everybody else to do the work to get you the puck. But you want the puck on your stick. You complain about not having it, but you're not willing to go compete to get it. And I think Travis Green talks about it so much, and we talk so much about the game in the offensive zone from the top of the circles down, is that you have to be willing to compete and come up with pucks. If you're a skilled guy and you want to make plays, you have to find a way to get the puck on your stick, not rely on other people. And even play away from the puck is now, in today's game, you have to work so hard, even away from the puck, to be an option. The way teams play. So it is, I'd say it's a huge foundation of our organization, is how much you will compete. I think a perfect example is right in front of us right now in Vancouver, Niels Hoglander, who's, a rookie that's off to a good start. People see all the highlight goals of him doing the Michigan and up on a stick and around back the net, and from his time overseas. But for me, he's a hard skilled player. You watch him; he hates being second on pucks. He's low to the ground, a great foundation, and he comes up with pucks, and his skill level allows him to make plays because he's so competitive. I mean, he hunts down pucks, he chases pucks. He's I think another skill that's often overlooked is a heavy stick. He's got a heavy stick. He's hard to get the puck from, and that's a perfect example of somebody that on the outside people go, oh, he's a skilled European player. No, he's a hard skill. Perfect example of somebody that plays in the trenches, that can play with people on his back just as he does as if he's just out there in practice.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned him. That's a great example. Another one that was coming to mind when you're talking is from one of your competitors over there is the Oilers and Yamamoto, like another smaller guy, skilled guy, but just works his ass off all the time. And it's amazing how many puck battles he comes up with and how many opportunities he gives to a guy like Draisaitl. Like, he makes Draisaitl way better. And I love the guys too that maybe are a little smaller in stature, because sometimes that's an excuse, I think, especially at the younger level. Like, there are ways to compete, as you just said, that way beyond like finishing your checks or fighting, or some of these old school ways that we might have automatically thought of competitiveness. I mean, lifting a guy's stick, being hard in the back check, second effort, right? Like going first to the corner, being willing to stand beside the net and getting that rebound, the second rebound, right? Like, lots of ways to do that. And I love your example there. I mean, Tyler Mott seems to be another guy. Actually, we're live right now in my Facebook group, as I told you. And for those of you listening, if you do ever want to listen to these live, Up My Hockey on Facebook is a great way to get there. But talking about Mott's start to the year, and we saw him in playoffs last year, and was an interesting addition. Travis Green at times almost had to fight to say why he's in the lineup, right? And I was like, why are these people asking this question? Like, look at what he's doing out there. Like, he was an example for everybody else of what competitiveness I thought looked like. Is he a kind of is there a soft spot for you with him? Like, was he somebody with Utica before you came up?
No, well, he played some games with us, but he was in a couple of organizations before he got to us via a trade. But there's a perfect example of identity. He's at Michigan. He's I believe a 30-goal scorer in college hockey, offensive, and you're watching now this guy come into professional hockey and trying to find his way of realizing maybe I'm not that at this level. And I give the kid credit. Like, even when he came to us, he came and played in the playoffs in Utica for us, and I could still see at that point it was like the identity is still being molded, and it's not quite there. And he's an unbelievable kid, fast. He's as physically conditioned as anybody you'll find. So everything, his makeup is right there. It's just, is the identity going to come together? And the kid committed to being the best penalty killer he could be relied on to match up against top lines. He plays physical, and now you're seeing. We've talked about it before. He gets his foot in the door, establishes himself in that role, and now he's tied the most goals on our team.
Right.
Like, and that's why I talk about he's got his foot in the door by realizing this is the player I need to be, and now he's evolving his game and moving his way into certain situations, which is an incredible example. If I'm a young kid, I want to find out, well, how did he go from there to here, and now he's working his way back to there. You know, it's those are guys you really can pay attention to, because it's everything you and I've essentially been talking about for the last hour.
Take another short break from the conversation here with Ryan to say that I had one other review here that I should mention. It's from Garth Gartner. It's a coach of a local team here, a North Zone team, so some of the best Bantam kids in the area, and they asked me to come in and speak to the team on some of these things that I've been doing. And I don't mention that enough. I mean, this is an option. If you are a coach out there, if you are a parent of a player that is on a team and you want to have a Zoom call with me on, you know, preparation, on mental toughness, on developing character, on competitiveness. I mean, there's a multitude of things that I do workshops on. I'd be happy to help. I mean, this is what I do. I love doing it. It's really great to see the sparkle in people's eyes when they recognize that some of these things, like character, is a skill, and resilience is a skill, and being a good teammate is a skill, and these are all things that are going to help you personally along your way to becoming your best. But it's also going to help your team win more games. It's also going to help you become a better player and a better person. So it's exciting. I love doing it. So you can reach out to me on the website, www.upmyhockey.com. There's a contact form there. You can reach out to me on Instagram, LinkedIn, where else? Facebook. So there's lots of ways to get a hold of me. The cool thing with what's going on, we're so used to Zoom now that I can be in anybody's dressing room, in anyone's living room, and we can be running these Zoom sessions, which I have been doing. And right now with what's going on with COVID and the you know, a lot of people aren't playing, games aren't happening. These players don't have the thing that they want, right? There's nothing there for them right now to focus on. This is the kind of stuff they should be focusing on. Right now, this is the perfect time to be focusing on things like character and mental toughness and how to handle anxiety and, you know, all these other different topics. So by all means, reach out. I'd love to help. I think now's the perfect time, maybe more perfect than any, that we can start working on these skill traits outside of the game. And and I get back to the review. 5 stars, keep them coming. Jason really captures the true meaning of playing hockey. It's great to hear the stories from former players and the hard work, dedication, adversity they went through to achieve their goal of playing in the NHL. There is no doubt that young players are learning to be a better version of themselves by listening to this podcast. So thanks very much, Garth, for taking the time to write that and having me in. And again, it's also a great reminder to me to let others know that, you know what, this can happen for their team, and you can get the value out of, you know, my experience as a player, my experience now in coaching, and of being able to speak with all these amazing guests, to put it into a toolbox for athletes out there. So good stuff. We'll get back to the interview now with Ryan Johnson.
Really?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
No, it's actually, and Greener, I mean, again, that word trust, right? So Greener there on the bench, he's seen this guy, what he's been delivering in the role that he was originally, you know, given, owned that role, even, you know, exceeded the expectations of that role. So guess what a coach does? He's going to give you a little more. He's going to give you a little more. You know what I mean? And then see what you do. And yeah, I mean, I love that. And I love the fact, though, that Greener's even able to do that, too. I mean, like some organizations aren't like that. You know what I mean? You have your established roles and you stay within them. To be able to see growth within an organization, and for the other players to see that, you know what, this is rewarded. When you do things the right way, you get rewarded. I think that's an awesome culture to be in, and really like what you guys got going on there. When we were talking about character, Johnny, character to me is a big word, and it's something that I've been working with my players on. I mean, really every time we talk, you know what I mean? Like on a self-assessment way, right? But when I say character, and I've said this on this show before, or when you say character, it's a pretty broad word, right? Even when we talk about professionalism. Like if you were to unpack character, and if you were to, like, maybe let's say grab 3 traits, or maybe your top trait, whatever you're comfortable with, like what would you take out of that word character to say, this is what I want my guys to have in spades when it comes to character? What trait would that be?
Well, I mean, it's, you know, I think when it comes to character and play, I think it's acknowledging that every person or every player is very different, and they're I said it before, that everyone's formula is different. You're going to have to find it. I think, you know, there's a part of me that I do think the ability or the willingness to find, or your professionalism, to be able to find your identity, to understand who you are and what you are as a person, and be confident in that, but at the same point have a sense of humility about the way you go. There's a fine balance there. I mean, I like kids that hate to lose, that love to win. I think we're trying to find winners in this business, people that will do the things to inevitably find their way to fit into a team. So when it comes to, man, to break it down.
Well, you just said that's competitiveness again, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does boil back to that. I mean, I think you've got to have a willingness to sacrifice with what we do, and to find there always has to be a willingness to sacrifice. There has to be, like I said, the ability to, and I keep coming back to self-evaluate yourself, not just on the ice, but off the ice. I do appreciate a sense of humility in character. I find it a very grounding, never being satisfied, never being content with who you are and what you are. I think comes back to a bit of humility. We could spend a whole nother conversation on this, but
when you find a guy, RJ, sorry to cut you off there, but like I just, Jerome again came to mind. Like when you, who was a past guest on here, and here's a guy just got inducted into the Hall of Fame. I mean, a peer of both of ours. He's a 77 birthday. But there's a guy, right? I mean, won the Maurice Richard, won the Lester Pearson, was at the pinnacle of the game, won the gold medal. You couldn't find a guy who's more grateful, humble, and just down to earth. And I think, you see that in Shane Doan. You see that in some of these other guys that are like, were perennial great players, but there was a level of humility, as you say, that was right there with the swagger. And I think when you have that nice mix, of like having the swagger, having the humility, you keep, one, your feet stay on the ground, and two, you keep getting better, right? Because that there's something else to go. So I love the fact that you bring up humility there a few times. I couldn't agree more with that. And we've talked about confidence a little bit. Like, could you speak to the idea that, a lot of us unpack confidence and think that confidence is something you get after you find a result in what it is that you're doing, right? No. So you go out there and you score your 3 goals, and now I'm confident because I had this good game. Yeah. Like, that's hard to do, especially when you're leveling up, because, when it's your first game in the NHL, you haven't scored a goal in the NHL yet. You haven't even had a shot on goal. So how do you walk into that environment and be confident? And I speak to the idea of the process. Like, when you do find that process, when you do find your identity and you're putting in the work, you show up on the scene with a level of confidence because you know that you've done what it took to get there.
Yeah. I say this like redundantly to my players and to guys is preparation breeds confidence. That's the only thing that will give you your confidence. Not luck. Luck may give you a feeling of an immediate gratification, hope. Those things, they don't last, but your preparation will breed your confidence, and it will carry you always. And even when things aren't going well, I come back to the preparation is when you're questioning yourself, or you've had a run of a couple games again, and your professionalism comes into this, is what are you going back to? What is your routine? What is your formula that got your confidence? And so when a guy says to me, I'm just struggling, I can't get it, I say, well, where's your preparation? Like, where is that? Are you going back to the place that gives you success? When you rely on that, usually you get it back quicker. When you start getting off track and your routine is out of sorts, or you're relying on other things to give you success, then you're in trouble. But when you come back to your preparation and your daily routine, and I always found when I was struggling, when I put when I put my energy back into the game or into my process, things somehow worked out where I could all of a sudden smile and go, yeah, man, that wasn't that hard. It just, sometimes you can tailspin and think of, well, I'm not playing with this guy, and man, I'm this and that. You just go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. But when you come back to your own, again, evaluating yourself, preparing the way you know to, trying something different, or when you're on, then you find your way out of it, and it comes back. It's same with, I find the guys that are nervous in training camps are the guys that didn't do the work. I can see it in their eyes. The second they come through the door, I can say, oh, that guy's not ready. But the guy that comes in that I know has done the work, he's got a smile on his face because he says, now the hard part's over. Now I just go everything. I just and those are the guys that end exactly. And that's, I can tell there's a major difference. And I can come back, I can see it in their eyes when they know they've done the work. They just spew it,
Danny Briere was like my third guest on here. And I don't know if you know Danny personally or not, but he's just an amazing human being himself. And he spoke super candidly about his path, right? And like his evolution, because he's massively struggled self-admittedly at the NHL level, right? I mean, he was a 96-point guy, I think, as a 19-year-old or 20-year-old in the AHL, and just couldn't find a way to get over the hump. And yeah, he's super vulnerable in that conversation. And he just talks about really dialing in this thing that we've been talking about called professionalism, right? In his process and his routine. Yeah. And then he got to a point where he said he was sitting on the bench, and even though he was 5'8" and 3/4 and 170 pounds, he felt that he was better prepared than the guy across the rink from him. He knew he was better prepared, right? Yeah. And he said that level of confidence that he earned because of what he was doing allowed him to become, the top 10 scorer and almost win a Conn Smythe and everything else that he did in his career, right? Yeah. And it was really interesting to hear him talk about that. And one of the ways that we ended up putting it, and maybe this is a good way to put a bow on professionalism, but he became consciously competent. Like he understood how he was going to be the best player he could be. And I think when athletes start thinking that way, right? Like, when am I at my best and why am I at my best? And now to create a package and a process around that, right? That this is how Ryan Johnson is his best player. You become consciously competent. And I think you need to be a curious athlete to be able to do that.
Yeah. And that's why I say when you do get your formula, it's amazing because it's not just immediately in whether it's business, relationships, anything. When you get your formula and understand what works for you as a person, and it's not blanket. Everybody individually's formula is their own. But when you find it, and then you can day after day after day after day. And to your point with Danny, it took him a long time to find that formula or figure out, I better find a formula or else I'm going to be in trouble. And you start to you start to think about it every day and every minute. It's amazing to hear even a story like that of somebody, like you said, that had all the success, didn't come from, but still was saying, man, how did I have that? Or how did it, or it came easy to me at one point. It's not coming easy anymore. I better figure this out, find a solution, or else I could be out of the league pretty fast here. So
just a mountain of talent he had too, right? I mean, he had to figure out how to be able to use that talent at that level. And Pete, oh my God, we just got a line from Pete Worrell. He's on right now, RJ. He's actually watching. So Pete, I don't know how long you've been listening for, but we told a story about how much we both respect you, and some stories from back in Florida. And RJ spoke of your time together playing in we're in New Haven for the Beast as line mates. So awesome to have you on here, Pete. Oh, and I missed the messages here. Tom Laidlaw was on, RJ. He says RJ is one of my favorite all-time people. So Tom, thanks for joining in. He was also a past guest on the Up My Hockey podcast. Just an awesome dude and an almost my agent. One of my biggest mistakes I ever made. I should have picked Tom back in the day. But yeah, so anyways, there's some great names tuning in here and listening, RJ. The idea with preparation, and maybe you can speak to this as a player, because it's something that I do work with athletes on now. And as I said, getting consciously competent, As far as a pre-game, now let's say, and that's not getting into just like the 24/7 idea of like being a hockey player, but how did you go about developing that routine, and how did you take care of your mind and body to be ready for competition? What was your process?
Well, it's just a lot of trial and error. I know that, finding out what worked for me. I think the one thing, and maybe through my dad, I mean, I was I was thinking about it nonstop. I can remember being in an apartment in New Haven, Connecticut, writing down what are you thinking about? What are we doing tomorrow? Uh, trying to check the boxes too of away from the arena. Is everything? Do I have everything in place away from the arena that puts me in a state that is going to allow me tomorrow to be the best player I could be? Or thinking, it was, finding the morning routine that helped me at night be the best player. It was a lot of trial and error, but I was a person, and some people are different, that, they need their mornings to be relaxed, and a pregame skate that they just go out. For me, it was from the time I woke up, I was thinking about what I was doing hour to hour to get ready for that night, for 7 o'clock. And it was my morning skates. I had to be, I would yell it out like, this has to be crispy. Everything needs to be. I would try to break people's sticks, and the simple, pass your D, loop up, go down, shoot. Like, I would try to put it through their sticks, and they, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, it's got to be like, I wanted things so good, and I wanted to feel good coming out of that skate. I would do certain things after the skate. Like, I mean, I was almost to the point when we got in bed at the end of the night. I mean, I was exhausted from the whole process, not just from the game, but I knew that's how I needed to be. I couldn't turn it on. I couldn't turn it off. And people laughed at me, said, well, you were a single guy in the NHL till you were 34, 35 when you retired. And I would find it hard to do what I was doing and have a family. And that's reality. I can admit that. Like, I was that focused in it that I would be scared. And not that that's why I made certain relationships, but I'm just being honest. That's how focused I had to be all the time. I was also a player. I was a bottom six player that I had to be, or I could be out of the league, just like that. And so I didn't take a minute off or a day off when I went in, because I could have it didn't matter my contract status. I always felt like somebody was lining up to take my job, and every day I had to earn it. And was that necessarily the case? Yeah, but it's the way I had to operate to have longevity. And that's how I felt. And like I said, it was exhausting at times. I mean, it was because it was all day, every day. But I felt the only way that I could continue to push myself and to get better and better and better to have longevity,
And I know this is different for everybody, and I still have Danny's conversation in the back of my head and know what I did personally. You seem pretty methodical with your approach. Was there a time, like, did you use visualization like in any type of standardized way? Like, did you have like a lot of guys? One of the things Danny spoke to was early in his career, he wanted to do so much, right? Especially at the NHL level, right? Like, I mean, he said, be first to the puck, be on the defensive side. If I'm in the slot, I got to shoot the puck. I got to find the open guy. I got to slow things down. Got to be hard on sticks. And he said all that stuff was just like, it ended up swallowing him. And he never really could focus on anything. So he ended up like finding a way to focus on one or two things a night. He had a visualization process where he would, go over his goal, whatever the case may be, right? But he actually got a systematic thing where he would use visualization, where you show up at the rink and he would now just essentially react and respond instead of like think on the ice. Can you speak to anything you use, whether visualization or otherwise, to get your mind ready for the game?
Absolutely. I always, I will take this the night before a game. I would usually do a 10-minute stretch, throw on music and stretch, and just it was more about getting my mind. I would just think about the best game I ever had, the best plays I've ever made, and what that felt like, and try to just run that through my head. But I felt like even getting in bed the night before, that I was already engaged in what I was trying to do. And again, maybe people say, "Oh, that's too much." It was what I needed to, again, coming back to preparation and confidence, to have me as confident as possible. And then same with after a 5:30 meeting for set, I would go out and warm up physically, but I would take 5 minutes again and just run through deep breaths, thinking about, what am I focusing on, and how did I feel when I had my best games ever? And again, it felt to me when I stepped on the ice, I felt confident because I had prepared, and I did as opposed to just showing up in the morning and going through it. And again, some guys' formula, that's what they need. They need to relax, relax, relax. Boom. I was the other way. I needed to have a full buildup. But I visualized. I spent a lot of time, warming my body up to make sure I was ready to go. I mean, I constantly read books. I was trying to get better,
Right.
in my mind. And we have way more resources today than we did then. There's so many more things from a mind control and things that you can do now that I think you'd have to be a bit ahead of your time if you're doing when we were playing.
Yeah. One of the things that I know for me personally, and just trying to balance that act of, like you said, finding out what works for you. And for me, I was a guy that I needed to take care of my stuff at home, as far as what our forecheck was, what I was supposed to do on a face-off, defensive zone coverage, like that type of stuff. Like that would be generally the stuff that I would visualize. So I knew when I arrived at the game, that stuff was taken care of, right? So I'm not on the ice.
Yep.
I'm not trying to digest stuff. And then when I arrived at the rink, for me, it was like getting my body ready, because my mind for me was already done. It was like, where's my energy level at? How do I get my body right? How do I get that, that tingle from your muscles? We've all experienced when you're ready to roll. And which was interesting, because in some environments, like me bouncing around the room and not having my gear on until like 5 minutes before we go out was kind of like, who is this guy? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's not professional. You know what I mean? But like, that was what I needed to do. And I had to own that, because I just needed to be a guy that was more loose and like focused on my body at the time. I wasn't sitting in my stall with my head between my legs, visual at that stage. And I don't think, like you said, I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong. It's what you need, but it's finding out what you do need. And then if you're in a position like you are in, allowing the players to do that, that it's not a cookie cutter approach.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why, you never pigeonhole guys. They have to do what, they have to do. I was, even from building a dressing room, I want guys to be themselves. I want them to be, if they're eccentric and they operate that and they feel better, I want them to be that. I want to see that. I just want, don't talk to me about it. Do it, but then show me it on the ice, that you could thrive in that, and I will cheer you on all day, and I'll ask for more of it. But don't talk so much that you don't back it up. But if you're one of those guys and you can put it on the ice, I tell the guys all the time, I want to see more of it. Like, be you. Yeah. Don't try to be something you're not. If it works for you, let's. How can we nourish that? How can we get more of that out of you?
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was just thinking that unbelievable interview with Scotty Nickel, who I know you know well and is doing your job for the Nashville Predators. He had a great quote. He says, "You know what?" He goes, "I don't want 20 milk drinkers on my team." He's like, it's boring. Nobody wants it. He's like, we want personalities. We want guys to be able to fill spots in the locker room. It's pieces to a puzzle. And I thought that was a beautiful way to put it, because you don't want to be the same guy. Let guys be themselves.
No, we don't. I don't want a team full of nice boys. I don't want a bunch of nice. I want sandpaper. I encourage it. That I also encourage guys to have fun. I say it at the start of the year. If we do this right, and we follow what I think from a culture, from an expectation of, if we think we need to develop, but we want to win developing. I'm a firm believer that when players learn to win early in their careers, it changes the whole dynamic of the rest of their careers. When they don't play playoff games, they're used to going home middle of April. It's hard to get out of that rut. So, and I want to win. Winning is fun, and I encourage guys that we will do things away from the arena as a team. It has to be fun coming to the arena. If we have consistency in who we are and what we expect every day, that we will find time. And you know me, I love to have a good time. We will find ways to make this fun for players, and we I try to encourage that. And with our days off, or giving guys the green light to go out and have some fun, like you work hard for that. And guys, when you can acknowledge that and say, look, we're going to dial in, and when it's time to go away, I want to see the sandpaper. I want to see the personalities. We brought our group to a football game in Buffalo, and I said to the guys, like, I want to see you. Like, don't sit here. I want to see you. And in between plays, like, there's 8 guys up with their beers, and they're all dancing. And I'm like, I'm seeing you. Like, this is good. I'm seeing you, and I want that. I want personalities. I want guys that make it fun. That are culture carriers in the sense of it's fun, but man, do they work, and they're professionals. But when it's time to let the hair down, or you're enjoying a win, like, enjoy it. It's supposed to be fun, and it's a huge message that if it's not, if you playing this game doesn't come from an area of love, and guys, you say that and guys go, oh man, what's he talking about? But I'm talking about love of the game. I'm talking about love of how you grew up to learning this game and growing your passion for it. Like, love that. Like, it's amazing the time you put in, or with your parents driving like that. You think about it, it's amazing. The love for your families and wanting to make them proud. The love the community that you play in, the love of your teammates, and what that feels like to win a hockey game. You've got the spider, these legs that come out from that word that are not what you prototypically think of the word love, but when it comes back to the game and all those avenues come into one ball, and you can approach the game with that every day, like it's amazing what could come of it.
That's so cool. No, I love you talking about that. This one success story I'll share with one of the guys that I'm working with privately. It's a lot of times I don't get to see these players, right? Because I'm not working with stuff on the ice. I'm working with them on stuff off the ice. But I did have a chance to see one of my players practice. It was just like a summer development kind of shinny thing, and he came off the ice, and I'm like, you're not having enough fun. And that was like, that sounds so trite and so simple, but that was like the biggest turning point for him out of anything, because he was so serious about getting good and being great and like trying to be professional that he totally was forgetting about what the hell he was on the ice for in the first place, right? Which is, he loves the damn thing. I'm like, do what you love. Remember that you love it. And tapping into that can be like an amazing release and an amazing, ability to find your own high performance. So I love that you talk about that, because, what we've been talking about here can have a serious overtone to it, right? Professionalism and being dialed in, doing all stuff. But you know what? It's got to be fun. You got to have a good time doing it. You got to know when that time is, and even find the joy in the practice of what that is. You can get better and still have a good time doing it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I love you hearing that. One thing that came to mind is, and I haven't been in a dressing room forever. So I don't know. It's all third-hand stuff. But I do know what it's like to be with my kids and their friends, and with the devices, and how they communicate and do all that. Yeah. And I know it's a far cry from how you and I hung out together, on whether it be on buses or on road trips. Is it more of a challenge now for what you do to like bring the guys together and create that family that I know that is so important to you with those 20 guys in the locker room?
I think so, and we, not that it's a hard rule, but we ask our guys, in the gym, in the trainer's room, in our actual in our dressing room, is we leave the phones out of it. Like, you need to go in the lounge, or you've got a family issue, or your wife or girlfriend, something, 100%. But when we're in those walls, as much as we can, we want to be present with each other. We want to have conversations. We want to look each other in the eye. We want to experience that. That's a part of being a team, that why it's so fun when you win is that you're engaged with these people. We ask that of them. We also understand it's harder in today's age to especially with scheduling or to team build. But we made that a priority. We've here in Utica, just a team line. We on practice days we have a lunch waiting that the TV's on, but we've a deck of cards out with things that we want them to spend the time together, because it's so easy to finish practice, rush out, you're gone. Even if it's half hour and you share a meal with somebody, you get invested in them. It often comes back to you as a team, but also individually. You find new levels when you're invested in your teammates. And we do a lot of things. I like consistency in culture. I like players knowing win or lose, you're in a tough spell or you're in a good spell. I want you walking into an environment that is consistent, that you're not on pins and needles of what am I getting today? Oh my gosh. And now that ends up disrupting your own process, your own, or where your focus is if you know you're going to come in and there may be some hard meetings or there's going to be some, but when you walk into consistency, I find players in a much better, especially players today. And we try to do, create a consistent environment when you're in the arena, but also finding ways outside of the arena that we can break ourselves down as people and dive into each other, whether it's we try to do something each month. And like I said, we've done NFL games in the past, or you get out, have some beer, or bowling days, or whether it's lunches, or bringing our families in and the girls in to include them in the process so they feel vested. I mean, we try to do things to create an atmosphere that everybody is wants to be in and knows it's an atmosphere that they're going to get better in, and that they're invested. Like I said, when you're invested in your teammates, often it helps you as a team, but it helps you individually of where you're willing to go for these guys.
Yeah, man. I mean, that word family, right? Like it is when you can actually feel like that. And I think we, and again, not to say these guys don't have it, but I know that on the teams that was successful in my journey and my career, the teams I played for, it was always a tangible difference when guys really cared about each other. Like the guys that hung out together, where you cared about that guy as a person, not just a player. And like you said, there's a different level of accountability to each other. There's a different level of investment, and oftentimes results are spawned from that too, right? The teams that always did the best ended up going the farthest too when it came to the family side of things. I'm gonna take it keep it on the rails just with the idea of this new generation. I know there's a lot of parents that listen to this podcast as well. I've also had some coaches on here talking about the sometimes inability of this younger generation of players to communicate face to face, look somebody in the eye and have a conversation, and how that's kind of becoming a little bit of a lost art form. Obviously you need to find ways through that, because you need to be able to communicate with guys and find ways to do it. But do you feel that there's still an importance in doing that? Like, is it something that you see fondly when someone can stand up there, shake your hand, look in the eye, and have a conversation with you, 18-year-old kid walking through the door? Or is it even an issue? Or do you not see that? Do you see these guys are able to communicate and it's fine?
No, I appreciate it when somebody shakes a hand, looks in the eye, and is able to. I know they're digesting something, or they're engaged in the conversation when their chin is up and we're looking at each other as men. And from a communication standpoint, as general manager of this team, I operate out of empathy, of presence, of I'm not a guy that sits up in the crowd and watches games and dashes into the coach room, dashes out, and you don't see anything. When you walk by me on the bus, it's like, oh geez. I'm in their faces. I'm in the hallways. And people will say, well, that doesn't work. Well, I believe it does. I believe in conversations, daily conversations. I believe in honest conversations. Just because I speak of some of these aspects of the love or investment or family, or it doesn't mean I don't have hard conversations. I have an obligation to these players to be honest. And that's one thing I owe them. And I have to be in and speaking to them on a regular basis to be able to be consistently honest with them and build relationships. I feel that a relationship that is pivotal in where they're going. I tell them all the time, my job here is not to step on you to get somewhere. And I think that exists in this business is, certain people I'm going to use you to get me here. My job, as I tell these players, is you step on me to get to the NHL and I'll feel like I've done my job. So use me, step on me. It may not be nice sometimes, may not be easy, but if we can be honest with each other and we can have, and sometimes it goes the other way. If a guy that maybe should be getting called up, but isn't, I can be honest with him and say, hey, you're doing everything you need to be doing. Just be patient. But even that little exchange of they hear that from me as opposed to just silence, it changes their day-to-day. It's like, man, okay, I appreciated that. Or
Right.
or having an honest conversation. You're not where you need to be, but I want to be in the fire and be able to look at these guys, because I think it's part of that investment of
Yeah.
them knowing I have their best interests, that I want them to step on me when I'm around, and they see the consistency in me in that, is that they believe me. And so when I tell them things, they go, oh, he's telling me this because he knows it's going to get me to where I want to go.
Right.
And that's something I've over time, but I've wanted to establish with my players and my staff. I tell my staff the same thing. Use me to get to where you need to go. That's what I'm here for. I'm not asking you to do things so that I benefit.
One more short break here. We have a 2-hour interview today, so I thought we'd break it up 3 times. And we're just going to chat about my character course that's available out there. It's called Developing Championship Hockey Character. It's on my website, www.upmyhockey.com. This is perfect for probably Pee-wee on up. Pee-wee right through the junior ranks. Actually, it's great. It's good for pros too. But as far as who listens to this podcast, I know it's parents and it's aspiring players, and it's definitely digestible at the Pee-wee level. It's applicable at the Pee-wee level, and it's a great thing for coaches to band around. It's discussion topics, it's perspectives, it's tools to put in your toolbox to really help your team identify who they are, who they want to be as a team, and also as individuals, who you want to become as an individual, what you are now, different way to look at yourself as a player, with all these intangibles that just keep getting mentioned again and again in this podcast that either people want or they're looking for or they wish people had more of, like character, like being a good teammate, like being resilient, like being dedicated, being accountable, being professional, having strong mental toughness. These things are all areas of the game that you have to have, and you should be looking at it. So my Developing Championship Character course is something I'm proud of. I work with teams with it. Individuals can also purchase it. You can do it on your own. I highly recommend it for parents and players to do together. And as I said earlier, it's great for coaches and teams. So that's available at www.upmyhockey.com underneath services. So check that out. And I know you're going to enjoy it. Now back to the episode with Ryan Johnson. Right. No, good for you, man. Yeah, that's awesome. One of the things that I thought was great advice from David Quinn was he said, the secret to my success was just serving the shit out of wherever I am. Doing the best I can where I'm at that time.
Yeah.
And I think even as a player, that's awesome advice, because we can get so caught up in trying to be somewhere else that we forget to live in the present moment and what we can do in that environment. Coaches, GMs, it applies to everyone, right? How good can you be where you are? And I think when you put your focus on that, how can you serve that organization the best you can? You're, as an individual, you're going to get taken care of at the end of the day.
And that's why I say to my entire group is I'm right where I need to be. So I'm not looking anywhere that right now besides the whites of your eyes. And so when you guys understand that, then I think we're all in a better place to understand that this is only the only place I want to be. And that's when I come back to is that I'm here to elevate you. It's not the opposite. So get that, and then now we're on the same page. Let's get to work. Let's focus in on the daily. And you talk about some young players these days, it's immediate gratification all over. It's like, well, yeah, but is it happening tomorrow? Oh, it's not? Oh, that's awful. I can't do that. It's like, well, this is a process. And that's half the buy-in too, is understanding this isn't, the cell phone's everything. You want something, boom, you get it. Blah, 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 blah. And it's hard with the young players right now to convince them of it's a process and it's not 4 days. I know you're used to everything happening so fast. This may take some time, but you buy into it and watch where you end up. And like I say, they all want to get called up. I want you to get called up and never see you again. The day I don't ever see you again those are good days. So
I can imagine the difference. So like you said, I've spoken about it before, but everything is like watch a movie. It's now we have to go pick it out of this video store and bring it back home, and rent the VCR, and Amazon Prime. You press a button from your home and it's at your doorstep 3 days. Like that's all the environment these current generation of athletes is growing up in. And now you're telling them you have to have a 3-year window before you get into the NHL. It's like, what? That's eons,
it's hard to pull those reins back, because you draft a kid and you say, well, okay, let's put a plan in place. Well, they say, well, my plan is I'm going to make the Vancouver Canucks in training camp. It's like, okay, I understand that, and it's a hard, you got to juggle it a little bit and say, okay, that's great, but let's get a plan in place to at least what's the next month look like, or what, and then 2 years later they're in the American League finding their way, and it's they want it immediately and they want it to happen, and you've got to today's day you've got to find the language and the way to say, okay, I get that. I'm going to harness your energy here. Let's just direct it the right way, and we'll get you there. Just may not happen in 3 months.
Right from the get go here, we've gotten away from your career, and that's too bad, because I wanted to do your career some justice.
That's a good thing.
But if we could, I know your dad was a massive influence on you growing up. I remember even at the time when we were roommates. And from the article that you wrote in the Vancouver Sun, you referenced him a bunch, and I posted that article. It's on NHL.com now in that Facebook group that I've been telling you about. And one of the people that listened to it, his name was, or read it, was Jarrett Bissett, and he said in the article you wrote, you did everything you possibly could to get there, or your dad said, I want you to do everything you possibly could to get there. And his question is, can you give some examples of that? Like, what would you as a 13 to 15-year-old kid, like, what would a typical week look like? And did you do other things that you think other kids weren't doing at that point?
Well, I think even 13 to 15, I would say my thought was not on the NHL necessarily. My thought was, I was a guy, at 13, I think I was maybe the 9th or 10th best forward on my team. At 15, but I would say at that to Jarrett's is, I think even at that point, I had a seriousness of how I wanted to go about my business, of what training looked like, what my off ice habits were, of what a week looked like for me. Like I think I cheated the system a little bit, in the sense of I had an older brother that was now at 19, 20, had been drafted, was one of the best college players of all time. I had a father, I had my other brother, Corey, that was, 4.5, 5 years older than me, that same thing, was playing junior hockey. And finally, I had a dad that, that at a young age instilled a lot of incredible habits in me that I was very thankful for. So I think having older brothers and seeing them already in it helped me at that age. Was I thinking of, even at 15, 16, and playing junior hockey in Thunder Bay at the USHL at the time, I wasn't even thinking of being drafted. I was just trying to find, I guess, my process and find myself as a player and what that looked like. I was kind of a late bloomer. But to answer your question, I was still engaged in routines and habits that I felt could get me somewhere in life. And I think I spoke in the article, we just happened to have a passion in our family for the game, but my dad's lessons were not about getting me to the NHL. They were trying to get me to be a really good person and be able to find my way through anything in life. Hockey happened to be that canvas of a lot of his life lessons. And it's amazing, life today, I still refer to a lot of our conversations or things that, I use in my daily life, that at the time, maybe I didn't see coming, but as I got into life and his passing, it was there's so many lessons that I'm still even taking from him today as I speak. So
you spoke about your brothers there, and it sounds like essentially role models, right? I mean, they're older than you. They're going about their business, having success. You're able to follow in those footsteps and probably wanting to emulate them and do what they were doing. awesome to have that growing up, especially having a father figure as well in that environment that is also a role model, showing you how to be a man, how to show up and take care of your business. Did you have that role model? I mean, I spoke about this on this show before, but in your professional career, was there ever anyone older that kind of took you under your wing or that served as that mentor kind of for you as you became a player?
Well, speaking of my brothers and my dad, people turned on the TV to see Wayne Gretzky or Mary Lemieux, I literally, and I can say this honestly, I would open up the bedroom from the door to my bedroom, and there were like three of my idols. Those were my idols. I wanted to be my brothers. My dad was hard on me, but that's why I say I cheated the system. I didn't have to turn on a TV. I had to walk down the hall, and I was like, man, but they taught me so much. And the other thing I think in my hockey career, and the group in Florida that we were drafted into the expansion team, and a lot of those players that ended up on those teams, those early teams especially, when I eventually worked my way out of the minors and got my first year in the NHL and full-time year. And I feel so fortunate looking back on the players that I was able to play around, Tom Fitzgerald, Brett Hedican, Bill Lindsay, Paul Laus, Robert Svela, Scott Mellenby was our captain. I mean, talk about a guy who lucked out in that I didn't say a word for the first 3 months of that season. I literally, sometimes they would look at me. I remember Ray Whitney would even be like, do you speak? Because all I wanted to do was earn these guys' respect. They had scraped and clawed their way through their careers and had longevity, had everything that I wanted, and all I wanted to do was take in what these guys had learned over their careers, and I felt fortunate, really fortunate, to be able to watch these guys my first year, and I credit a lot of them to me having the longevity I had, because I sat and watched day to day, talk about professionalism and how hard they worked and how they approached every workout, every drill, the intensity. And I was blown away by it. And a lot of those guys ended up taking me under their wing, looking out for me, teaching me the kind of the way of the league. You talk about overwhelming a kid from Thunder Bay on planes and hotels and dinner and in these buildings. It was it was a lot, but to say one player, or it was that a group of those guys that really they showed me the right way, and I'm thankful for it, because if I had come into a situation that maybe had a different dynamic, I'm sure it would have affected the course of my career. And I was fortunate to play with those guys. I was traded to Tampa, where I saw the other end of it, a team that was coming up, and was able to, I think, a special relationship that I had was with Marty St. Louis, who we came into Tampa, and to watch a guy like that kind of have the world stacked against him, and talk about a player that he just wasn't going to be denied, to watch his process firsthand, to be friends with him and his wife, and watching them deal with everybody saying you can't do it, and look what that guy went on to do, and how he kicked the door down just because of his relentlessness, the way he played the game, the way he approached the game, and what he ended up doing. It was fascinating to see at the time how he just got in, and then to where he went to. Again, there's another, if players want to dig into a player that had everybody telling them they couldn't do it for so long, and then to just not just do it, but be a Hall of Famer and Stanley Cup, and it's
Hart Trophy, Art Ross.
It's
ridiculous. I can't believe it. I mean, I love I don't believe that in my research, while he wasn't good enough, that, you were seeing him at a 40-point, 78 game, Martin St. Louis, coming off of his stint with Calgary, where I know that they told him to his face that he would never play another game in the NHL.
Oh, for sure. Them. And when he came to Tampa, and he and I were new there together, and I could just see it in his eyes. He was like, well, here's another door I'm going to kick down, and he got his opportunity, and he was healthy scratched, and he was just patient and did his work. And when he got it, I remember, those first bunch of goals that he scored when he got his opportunity. I mean, I almost fell off the bench. I was just like, oh my God, he's here. And to see the look in his face and the happiness and like I say, with him and his wife, Heather, and knowing the time and the resiliency that he had to have and the effort that went into that. And then to see his career. And obviously I was traded back to Florida and missed what I knew was going to happen around there. What eventually happened, but sad I missed that. But obviously excited for that guy and the player and the person, incredible person, as well as a player.
Oh, that's awesome.
Sure.
He's actually he's in my top, like my dream list of like guests. Like I never played with him, right? But I know I didn't know you did though. I might have to really grease the wheel here after this interview, RJ, to get me hooked up with him, because I'd love to have him on. I think he'd be everything I heard about him, like you said, as far as the adversity, the journey. Having to have the growth mindset, the belief, what he would have overcome to get to those spots. I heard he was just like a beast when it came to working out and his approach away from the rink. And I mean, all that stuff. I just think that he would be such a great guy to talk to. But
and that's why I say there's an example of a guy that, he didn't worry about what people thought of him. He just did the work, and he knew he was prepared when he got his chance, and when he got the door opened for him, and look what happened,
Do you, and this is, you spoke about how you recognized early that you needed to be something else to be in the NHL. Do you feel, and here's a candid question, do you feel that you might have pigeonholed yourself in that role that didn't allow you to become something else other than how you arrived on the scene?
Maybe a touch, but I will say this with the side of realism too, I don't have regrets or anything like that, but I became such a gym rat that I was so over conditioned to play the game, in the sense of, like, I was so over prepared from my off ice, is that I wish I had spent, and it was just maybe the era too. We came in, like I said, everything then had transformed into, it was almost more of, you came into training camp, you tested, and if you were like, this guy's unbelievable, and it's like, he hasn't touched the ice yet, but he's unbelievable. Right. And I probably went overboard with that. And again, that was like I talked to you about, my mental preparation is that, I was in the gym so much, and people would show up at 8:00 and go for lunch at 1 and still see my car there and be like, what can you still be doing in there? But I think it obviously it did help me, but I should have been on the qualities of my game, the hockey sense, my skating was always as good as anybody's, but the small area play, the playing through traffic, the skill work in traffic, the below the dots, the puck protection, the in and out, that stuff I should have been working on, and that I think would have evolved my game further. And right. I think, people can say, I got pigeonholed as this. I think I did. I pigeonholed myself in a little bit that I wish I would have spent more time on the ice, working on my shot, working on, like I said, the agility, the small area play, all those things. I think it would have evolved my game further than what I was. But I also knew when I broke into the league, I had to I ran over everything that moved. Like, that was what I became. That wasn't me, but I became a guy that I hunted people, because that's how I felt I needed to get in. And I had to lay people out. I had to play that style of game to stay there,
Yeah. That's awesome. What an amazing career too, 700 games. And obviously not an ounce of me is asking that question with any disrespect at all. Like, that's amazing. One of the reasons I asked though too is because Tom Laidlaw came to mind, obviously showing up here on the chat and wishing you well. In our interview, he said, he was captain of the Rangers, right? Or no, assistant, I think. And, a leader everywhere he went, respect within the league, 10-year pro. And one of the things he said is like, you know what? He goes, I wish I would have reached higher. He goes, like, my whole thing was like how to get to the NHL and how to stay. Yeah. And he's like, and I did that, but he's like, I never thought, can I be the best, or where can I get to? You know, and he goes, if I have any regrets or reflection, he goes, I just would have held a higher standard for myself about where maybe I could have got to, because I was kind of ended up getting comfortable with just being in the NHL.
Yeah. And that's where I was given opportunities at times to move up the lineup. And I think my preparation didn't give me the confidence to get there and stay there. I had stints playing up the lineup. I played in matchups playing against teams' top lines, but I think had my preparation been different and what I worked on day to day, especially in the off season, as opposed to 4 hours in the gym and I think I would have had the confidence to move up more.
Yeah.
And I don't say that with any disrespect to myself or my career, but it's the reality of it. And I've said that to people around, is that I should have spent more time on the ice, less time in the gym, because I should have been evolving my game in those areas, as opposed to being satisfied. This is what I am, but I'm going to be the strongest and most explosive SOB out there,
Yeah.
So it could
I can relate to that. I think we were a product of our environment too. Like you said, I mean, like there was so much emphasis put on that fitness testing. I'm sure there is now too, but I mean, that was really where I don't remember shooting one puck in the summer ever. I mean, it's just even thinking about that. I mean, I remember being in the gym. I remember a pool of sweat being on my stationary bike in my basement, with no one watching, like just going through the grind. And making sure I came to camp in good shape. But I don't remember working on my hands or working on my shot or, consciously trying to develop those skill area things. We were just, I mean, I was wired with trying to be in the best shape I could be. That was what I was trying to do.
I would have found the best guys, and I would have moved there, and I would have worked 3 months on ice with them and evolved my game. I mean, but that just wasn't the mentality, or even were the resources around then to do that. That's the crazy part. But
when was we'll wrap up. I mean, RJ, God, we could probably spend a weekend together in some long lost cabin and roll good. Forever. But adversity is an interesting thing for anyone. I mean, whether it's in business, whether you're a student, whether you're an athlete, it's going to come. You're right. It's coming at some point. So something's going to happen, and how we get through it really defines sometimes careers, sometimes professions. Yep. When do you remember going through something like your biggest kind of bout with it as a pro, and what was that, if you'd care to share, and how did you work on getting through it?
I think.
I know you had a couple big injuries. Like, was it tough to come back from any of those, or I didn't know you weren't really in the minors much. I didn't know what your answer would be on this one. Yeah,
I mean, I think the biggest is I had a lengthy concussion in Florida, where I was kind of told, that could be it, that was, I was still young enough, I think, and still naive, that I felt, well, I can do anything. I'll come back from this. And I had a coach at the time that was like, you're done. And I had to come back following training camp and run around like an idiot and show that, my head was fine. I think I've had a few different injuries. I think my mentality was I'll work my way through it. I think maybe one of the biggest was losing my dad. I mean, I leaned on him so incredibly much as a friend, and as that I truly felt at that point is like it was a reminder of that I was still playing the game because I loved it for myself, and that but I had moments of thinking my dad's not going to be watching. My dad's like, do I have the fight? Was I playing for my dad, or was I playing for me? And it was, I think, a time I had to, I was, almost 30 years old, but I felt like a boy all of a sudden. They say you really, you become a man when you lose your dad. And even at that point, and I was a free agent and going to Vancouver in this new environment, and there were moments where I was like, how am I going to do this? I think it, like I said, it was a stark reminder that all this work and everything that I'd done and the sacrifices, and as much as I loved he enjoyed it, I was doing it for me. and I loved the game, and I loved what it had given me so much, even to that point that it took me some time, and I wish I probably would have talked about it more. I should have talked to somebody at the time. I struggled for a little bit early on just with my play and kind of sorting through all that, but I think when it came back to it, it was again, I talk about the love part of it. I loved the game. I loved going to the rink. I loved what I represented. I loved what I was a part of. I loved making my family proud. And even though my dad wasn't there, I was still making him proud. And it picked me back up. It just took me some time to kind of work through it. And I think even that article that you mentioned, I think that was like almost therapy for me. It was, I needed to put that out there to kind of say, all right, I'm back here. I can get going. And so it's, there were so many moments of adversity when you think back and when you look back on it. But that's something that sticks out that may not be typical of a player thinking,
Sure.
oh, I went at tails, but it was something a huge part of my life that it took some working through. But yeah,
it's different for everybody. What those moments are. Just looking at the comments here, Joey Tedorenko says, "Great stuff, boys." Hugh Hamilton says, "Nice to see you two together." So there's some names from the past. Eh?
Oh man, that's funny.
Isn't that awesome?
Good people.
So great, right?
Sure.
Like just the name can bring a smile to your face for sure, right? And I mean,
yeah.
One of the things with this awesome sport, and I know it doesn't have to be hockey, and it's different things for different people. But I know I owe a ton of friendships and a ton of relationships and a ton of this house for. I mean, pretty much everything I got that means anything to me is from hockey, and it's a special thing that we got here, and I'm glad we're able to kind of celebrate it and give it the respect that it deserves and talk about it in a way that. I don't think we really had that education growing up. Well, maybe you did a little bit more than me because you were around your brothers and around your father and you were seeing it, but I know I learned a lot as I went, and from the sport, and from the people that were around it. And seeing Hugh's name there and Joey's name gives me a smile too. Yeah. One of the things you said in that article, I mean, I think it was in that article that there's some other stuff that I read here leading up to this, but talking about adversity and also thinking about what David Quinn said was, how people handle it. And who are you when things aren't going well, right? Because that's almost a description of what character is if we were going to break that down, I think, because everyone's a pretty good guy when things are going good, right? 5-game winning streak and you're scoring goals and you're nice to everybody. And, that energy is obviously easy when things aren't going well and you haven't scored in 2 weeks and you've been sat out of the lineup 3 times and, life's not good. I mean, what are you doing then and how are you getting through it? And I thought that you had an interesting approach there about like looking across the room and seeing if you could help somebody else up. Is that something you still do? And when did you have the pragmatism, the selflessness to take that approach to a slump or to a downtime?
Well, we've been in dressing rooms since we've been how old, right? And you see how players handle it or handle their successes. My son's team won a little mini tournament last week and I wouldn't let them off the bench and they want to go celebrate. But I was yelling at them, you go over and you celebrate this other team you just played, and then you'll have your time. But I wanted them to, even as 8-year-olds, to think, man, maybe we can celebrate this other group and have a little bit of humility, and maybe today was our day, but tomorrow night might not be our day. And they weren't too happy about that. But as I think even into my pro career, so many guys handle things so differently, and I think, like I said to you, I've always been an observer and watch people and how I felt, guys could lose confidence very quickly of exuberance and, hey, what a day. And there was a sense of insincerity to guys that handled their successes in that type of way. And I felt through my own struggles or adversity and having a couple tough games, is that if my energy could go into my teammates or even a staff member or something, as opposed to the woe is me and I'm going to bury my head here so that everybody could see me not feeling good, and then their energy get wasted on me. That what if guys know I'm struggling, but I come in and I'm asking them, hey, what a great play you made. Like, I know you're hung up on, but you made a couple great plays. All of a sudden, their shoulders was like, what the fuck is this guy doing? Like, how was he? And all of a sudden, the energy of the room, we've all been seeing the guy that's so happy he's got to go the next day. He doesn't. And it's, he's bitching at the trainers and he needs this in a stall or needs this. Just energy just crashes. So it's not easy to do, but I always felt that if I could show how I could navigate through adversity, that maybe it would change the way other people thought about their own adversity, and how maybe as a group we could work our way out of this, as opposed to let me try to tailspin and everybody. I mean, nobody's going to get me out of that besides me. So why not save them the time and energy? I'll get myself out of this and see if I can't give some energy to somebody else that might need it in the room. The odds are pretty good it's going to come back to me tenfold. So
yeah, no, great for you. That's those are wise words. And it's funny because like what I'm hearing there is actually two different philosophies, and they contradict each other. Like one being the accountability side, which I think we all have to have as professionals. You want to be but you have to have the accountability that I'm not a victim, right? I'm empowered to make my life different, right? So it's on me to get myself out of this. Like I totally 100% believe that. Yet we're also saying on the other flip side that if we do focus our energy somewhere else, you can help someone else out, and we've all felt that before, right? So it's interesting, right? Because we don't want to wait for someone to help us. We don't want to wait for that coach to say the magic thing and help us out, or some a teammate to walk across the room. But we do have a tremendous amount of power as teammates to help each other out, to give that guy maybe a little bit of confidence that he needs, And when we take the focus off of the woe is me and what's wrong with me, and our perspective is how can I help, that energy of how I can help and how I can serve, it just changes, right? It changes what's happening in that room and even in yourself. So that's one of the beautiful things about team sports, and why I can't believe those guys that play tennis and golf, and like, where else do you go? What else do you do, right? Like we have the benefit of that, right? 19 other guys in that room that could use us in some way. And I think the earlier and the more mature we can be about that recognition, and you speak so eloquently about that in an article. I mean, what a great gift and what a great lesson. So thank you for sharing that, RJ. I think we should wrap up and maybe just do part 2 in 6 months or something. I know there's a ton more we can get. Well, we didn't even get in. I mean, I like to keep this education. Like I want to talk about, your role as, player development, and how that even works with the director of amateur scouting, and how that relationship passes off. And like, there's so much good stuff that we can go with. But I mean, whatever. It is 2 hours, and I need to go to the bathroom and tame this wrestling match that's happening outside my office right now. So
that's life, right?
Yeah, that's life, man. That's life. But I mean, awesome guest. So great to catch up, buddy. I really appreciate your time, and we love watching what's going on with Vancouver. I like seeing the evolution of what's going on there. I know you're a big part of that. So thank you for being so gracious and showing the humility that you talked about earlier to come on and share some great stories with us and the guests here.
Well, I appreciate having me on. This was, like I said, feels like no time has passed at all. We're still sitting in Greensboro, but I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate the guests, the comments, and some of those names. It's been it's great to hear those names. That's for sure. And anytime you want to do it again, I appreciate this format that you've created, and I know a lot of people are benefiting from it. That's for sure.
Oh, so awesome, man. Yeah, well, I told my wife already. I said, well, there's way more than one reason now, but RJ is a big one that we have to go to Nashville, and we're going to have to spend a weekend at least, and we'll go visit Hammer Lemanowitz over there, a little bit north of you.
That's right.
And so that's right. Once this COVID can go screw off and go away, I think you might have a family of 5 rednecks coming down and visiting you.
with open arms, my friend, with open arms. That's for sure.
All right, buddy. Well, thanks again. Best of luck to you. We'll be in touch. And thanks for listening, everybody. Appreciate it. Once again, if you want to be a part of the interview next time, join Up My Hockey, the parent group, and upmyhockey.com is where you find me. So thanks, RJ.
Okay. Thanks for having me, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ryan, for being with us. If you're listening, RJ, I know I sent you a text afterwards, but geez, that was just a real feel-good interview for me. I know you're always been an intelligent, insightful man. Always been a lot of fun to hang out with. Really enjoyed our time together, and to get back, in front of each other and have a conversation of that magnitude and of that depth really is something that serves me. I'm totally one of those conversationalists. I'm not a dinner party guy that has the hey, how you doing conversations, but when I can sit in front of somebody and ask questions and have a good, real conversation that really fills me up. So thank you so much for taking the time. I hope others were filled up by this conversation. This is so much stuff to take away. I mean, the fact that somebody like Tom Laidlaw, who he himself, he has the brand True Grit Life, a hard-working guy from the farm that, got things done by the sweat of his brow and the dirt underneath his fingernails. To come on while we're recording the show and to say, hey, RJ is one of my all-time favorite people, and for Pete Worrell to come in and say, hey, one of my favorite people, and Hugh Hamilton to come in and say, hey, great to see you two guys. It's a testament to Ryan, what he stands for, what he's about, how he lit up during that conversation when talking about people that he's helped get to the next level. He says he wants people to stand on his shoulders to get them to their own personal greatness, and that he just gets off on that. And that's such an amazing thing to get off of, and I can totally relate to him in that. Helping people be their best. I mean, I can't think of another thing that is as gratifying, to see success, to be a part of greatness, to be a part of growth and development, and serve others the way Ryan is doing and the way I am doing it. It's a really awesome space to be in. So, this kind of stuff doesn't happen, though, if guys like Ryan, who have a ton of things on their plate and people to take care of, if they don't take the time to share those stories with us, if they don't take the time to share their experience and what they're passionate about and all the lessons they've learned from playing the game and after the game, we don't get it. We don't have the opportunity to know it. And then you're left trying to figure it out for yourself. And my gosh, we all know how successful that is. Obviously isn't, right? So anyways, RJ, thank you so much. Everyone, again, thank you for tuning in. Hope you're really enjoying the pod. Got a few awesome guests coming down the pipe. Keep plugging these things out. Keep listening, keep sharing. And until next time, play hard. Keep your head up.